opportunity.
There's a lot to talk about, certainly.
There sure is.
Haven't really talked a lot since the passage back in 16, but
Right.
now as it's looming, as we
It
know
is
that
looming very, very actively now. Yes,
it is
once
looming
again.
by the end of the year, and you'd always promise, as the head of the Trucking
Yes.
Association, that there was going to be action taken, whether it's legal,
That's correct.
talking with more national powers, and now
Correct.
the state saying,
Right.
"Oh, we're going to be there in Hopkinton at
That-
the end of the
yeah,
year."
That's right.
Where's the Trucking
Well,
Association?
I repeat this. John Howell of the Warwick Beacon said very eloquently, this is a story that's going to keep giving and giving and giving for many years. And this is yet just another chapter of this situation. Nothing we didn't expect is happening. We knew all along. We knew from day one, essentially, that our testimony against this was all for naught, that this was on the fast track. It was preordained, but we feel we did a real good job of exposing the pitfalls and the shortfalls of roadworks as we continue to do that. We now have watched this take place with a memorandum of understanding going forward. The requests for proposals are out, and I understand they have contractors ready to go. And as you heard, yes, we're looking at, in late November, December, we're looking at two gantries going up, one on Mechanic Street in Hopkinton, West Greenwich, and the next one would be further north or south, depending on which way you're going, on the Taft Hill Road bridge. And I believe they're going to be free. They're going to be free travel, meaning full motion gantries, and they will be both on the northbound and southbound lanes. So that's where we are. Again, this is nothing we didn't expect. We expected this. Obviously, we speak with Washington on a daily basis. We are working now to get some information from the local Office of Federal Highway, Mr. Machado, so we can now see where the NEPA studies are. The NEPA studies essentially are the National Environmental Protection Agency studies of these tolling locations. And you think environmental, you think creeks and pollywogs. This is more about the impact of these tolls, and not just the individual tolls, but the whole network of tolls. What's it going to do to secondary road diversion, which we've talked about? What's it going to do to community pricing, congestion? What's it going to do to the supply chain? More of a wholesale impact study on how it's going to affect our daily life. So we're trying to glean that information right now from the Federal Highway, which is tasked now with issuing those memorandums of understanding, and those toll locations are based on them passing the NEPA studies, and I can only assume that with Taft Hill Road and Mechanic Street, those have passed and they're going forward. So at this point, yeah, there's all sorts of speculation that our best course of action for our state would be now that Patricia Morgan, Rep. Morgan, has put out a bill to repeal. That will be heard. Unlikely that there will be a shift change, but we will expose more facts. We believe our facts hold a lot more water than theirs. This is a reckless policy. It was reckless when it rolled out. It continues to be reckless, even as early as recently as last week or earlier this week, where it was determined that we, in a failed policy to give back half-price registrations to appease the business community, they in fact gave back fees to all of the trucks traveling nationally under what we call apportionment. And apportionment means trucks are paying Rhode Island a portion of their annual registration fee to Rhode Island for every inch of mile that they use in Rhode Island 24/7, 365. So in a failed policy, the General Assembly didn't realize that these, by saying Rhode Island registrations, they would in fact be including the very trucks that they're going to be tolling. So we're tolling them, and we're giving $1 million back to them. Again, from day one, this policy has been a disaster. Even before the first toll is collected or the first lawsuit is filed, and we'll talk about that, this thing is an abject disaster. Unfortunately, they're in a territory that they really don't understand, and as this thing goes forward, the loss last week is essentially a commerce loss, because in the perfect world, they would have said, no, it just applies to Rhode Island trucks, but because of fair commerce and equal protections under commerce, they had to extend that out to the very trucks that they're tolling. So the whole thing for 2.5 years has unraveled. We feel that not many of the governor's policies have been successful. The only reason why roadworks is deemed successful is because it hasn't been tried yet. And when it tries, unfortunately, it's going to fail. So again, going back, the best thing that our state can do is step back and realize this is reckless. You're basing our economy and our supply chain on the behavior of an industry that has a track record of beating things, whether it be legally or on the roads. We're going to beat this one way or another. So the best course of action our state could take would be to look at other states. Look at California. Look at New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Look at Tennessee this week. They're all embracing the trucking industry. They're embracing business. They're saying, let's sit down. An opportunity we're not afforded. Let's all loosen our belts. Give a little bit more. Most states are doing, for instance, California was 20 cents on the diesel for trucks and 12 cents on gas. There's a number of variation, and that's on a state-by-state basis. In addition to fuel taxes, they're looking at increased fees on registrations, fees on hybrid vehicles that don't pay a gas tax. It's a shared burden. Everyone's realizing we're in an infrastructure crisis because of what Washington hasn't done, what's failed to do. So most states are embracing it, working together, and there's a shared burden, and people are buying into it. In this state, our governor wanted to do something different. It's not sustainable. It's not a viable program, but she wanted to do something she wanted to do the Raimondo brand. It turns heads. It's something revolutionary, but it doesn't work. It's not going to work. Let's do what other states are doing. If we put 18 cents on the diesel, as we had said, we would collect roughly probably $10 to $12 million a year on diesel alone. We also combine that with increased truck registrations and a myriad of other fees to give us something. They didn't want to touch a gas tax, but as I just said, other states are doing so. If we put 5 cents on the gas tax additionally, that would bring us over $20 million a year. So between gas tax and a diesel tax, if you combine those two, then you add some fees on like other states are doing, we're looking at a pretty robust, sustainable funding mechanism for our infrastructure. And that is without the risk of the trucking industry's reaction, without the legal challenges that are going on, without the investment in gantry infrastructure, without all those things. It's a guaranteed, tried and true mechanism that's funded our infrastructure for years. So why we're rolling this out, again, I think it's because we have a governor that is intent on promoting her image and doing things that are outside the box, even if it doesn't make any sense. Again, look at 22 plus other states that are doing it in a combined, shared manner. So I think inevitably we are going to see gantries go up in December. Inevitably there will be a suit filed on one of probably 5 different grounds. And if it does succeed, which we don't think it will succeed, ultimately it's going to fail by go back to the 50s when Governor Dennis Roberts said, Rhode Island's not a carved state, tolling's not going to work here. He said that diversion will happen by the choice of free travel, and that's what we call in the trucking industry as diversion. So it didn't make sense back then. It doesn't make sense now. We wish we could solve this problem locally, but it doesn't appear that the General Assembly has the appetite to do that.
So let's talk about having control at the local level versus control at the national level. Now, one of the communications you had sent referred to what we're hearing out of the Trump administration. So how does that work when you're addressing gas and diesel taxes at the local level, and here you have a president that you hear some rumblings from D.C. that might be looking at from the federal level?
We haven't raised the national gas tax in 23 years or so, something crazy like that. So that's, if I say one thing to the governor, yes, each governor has had a critical decision to make as far as infrastructure funding. Most, if not all, are making the right decisions. But yes, this problem has been brought on by the national failure to get a sustainable funding mechanism to help the states out. So governments, local governments, state governments are taking it into their own hands, as I just mentioned before. All other states are getting a shared burden. So what we're looking at now, and gas tax was considered by many of the third rail for legislators. It's not that anymore. Most legislators, Pete DeFazio is a Democrat out of Oregon. I briefed him in January on roadworks. He's anti-toll. He came out yesterday and said, he said a while ago, no one's going to lose their election on gas tax. And he said it's going to kind of be funny when the Trump people are already paying for infrastructure with their gas tax, meaning trucking and business, and now you want an extra type of fee in terms of a toll in addition to that. That's double dipping. We're not taking anything away. We're just keeping lumping on. What we do find is two things. The trucking industry has made inroads with the president. He trusts us. I think he trusts us more than the infrastructure people and the politicians. I think he thinks the trucking industry are honest brokers, and that's why he said as early as last week that perhaps a national gas tax is something to look at. Across the board, most decision makers in this nationally, Bill Schuster is the chairman of House Infrastructure. He said that, quote, tolling on the interstate is a non-starter. When we talk about tolling, there's allowances for tolling. Bridges like the George Washington Bridge, parkways, throughways, pikes, those are sustained by tolls and only tolls. They don't take federal funds. Rhode Island has taken federal funds for decades, okay, and they've squandered them. They've diverted them away from where they should have been on the roads. They've had poor infrastructure planning, and now in a crisis, they've pivoted, blamed the truck industry, tried to toll us instead of looking at what the real problem is. The real problem is not whether it's going to be tolls or a gas tax. The real problem is the original problem, which is the spending. They've got to get that under control. They've got to get the spending under control, the construction under control, and then maybe we look at the types of sources that are going to work. But we think that in Washington, the tolling of the interstate is something that has never been allowed to happen, but for, again, the circumstances I talked about before, bridges and tunnels. What roadworks does is it basically exercises a narrow loophole, and it's small overpasses, it deems them bridges and allows them to place electronic gantries on those bridges, and essentially they will toll those bridges. The funds from those tolls will actually go right down physically into the repair and or replacement of those bridges, and once that bridge is structurally either repaired or replaced, those funds can now be used on other structures around the states. So essentially what Rhode Island is hoping to do is double dip, to continue to get the federal funding, but also to get the toll money. We don't think it's right. We think that obviously our class has been singled out. We think it's discriminatory. We think it's unfair. But I think that on the national level, our hope is that there will be a remedy coming forth very soon with the Trump administration. Our hope is that that would render roadworks the need to toll trucks only. It would render that moot.
What type of remedy are we talking about? Looking at the gas tax, then?
Looking at a national fuel tax increase,
okay,
and perhaps a local tax increase as well. But a lot of the states now are increasing the fuel and gas taxes and fees because it's not happening in Washington.
Yes.
So maybe once it happens in Washington and we kind of fix the national system, and Rhode Island finally gets a more sustainable funding mechanism from Washington, we'd be in a good shape, you would think.
You would think, but what if we're in a situation where they look to address the gas tax from the national level, but yet somehow Rhode Island doesn't see, is there a promise that this will be basically divided equally amongst the states? What if Rhode Island says, fine, we'll take that money, but we still want to toll you as well?
Well, I mean, they've already indicated that even if they have oodles of money coming from Washington, that we're going to still proceed with truck tolling.
And how does that impact the trucking industry?
Well, it impacts the trucking industry because what we're essentially going to do is do one of three things. Well, if we don't beat it legally in court, what we're going to do is either do two things. We'll either divert around the state, we're going to divert off the roads to the highways onto the secondary roads, which doesn't help the degradation of the secondary roads. It doesn't help, or we're just going to pass it along to the consumer. And that's essentially the end game here, is essentially that once tolls, if they do come to fruition, 14 locations, 33 gantries, trucks will either divert around the state, off the roads, it will underperform, and then those toll trucks that do come here, the trucks that still choose to drive through Rhode Island, trucks that still want to do business here, will essentially pass along those costs to our consumers. So, at the end of the day, trucking is going to figure this out. We always do. We have options. The problem is the citizens of Rhode Island don't have options. We're going to be strapped with this reckless legislation, and that's why really now is the time locally for us to fix this. Not to rely on a fixer in Washington. We hope that's coming, but the way to remedy that is not to roll out a reckless gamble on an industry sustaining. Again, roadworks, mind you, is $45 million projected a year. They will never gain that. They will never attain that amount. It will shape up more like $10 million a year from tolling. It's only 10% of the annual budget. So why are we going through this battle? Why are we alienating the business community? Why are we potentially going to have a legal challenge? Why are we really the laughingstock of not only the trucking industry nationally, but the business community that we're trying to embrace and bring here? I don't understand why we would be doing this for a small portion of
the small portion of it.
Yeah, that's right.
You had started to talk about one of the things I want to discuss is the potential legal options.
Sure.
Now, one of the things you had mentioned all along as this was going through was, do you have to wait until something's in place to sort of then?
You have to prove harm.
Okay, that's the proof of harm.
We've explored a injunction or a to make a move to preempt the tolls. Apparently, we do have to wait until those are up and there are tolls being collected. So they can have a gun to your head with tolls, but you have to have them pull the trigger before you can.
And how soon thereafter can you prove harm? Are we talking weeks?
I assume,
is there a time frame?
I assume that you could do it, the day after, and there's no tried and true strategy here or conversation on when we're going to do it, or at what gantry, inevitably we will be filing suit on some grounds.
So proof of harm is one, and what other approaches you could take?
Well, the discriminatory nature of that, and favoritism of local industry on several counts. There's a number of grounds that they will look at, and I imagine they will either sue on the most vulnerable piece, or they'll look at several on that and look at that. But there's a pretty capable group down in Washington that do this on a national level. We've got the funny thing is the trucking industry, they're all down in San Antonio right now. The industry, the federation, I couldn't make it down, but they're conducting a lot of advocacy for. We got 50 states with 50 trucking associations with 4 million drivers driving around as we speak, 7 million people in the industry. There are so many issues that we're tackling that actually, believe it or not, right now are more impactful and harmful to the trucking industry. So we're working on an issue nationally that's very harmful, and we're trying to get some relief there. And obviously,
can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's F4A. F4A is the Federal Aviation Administration Act of 1993, which said interstate trucking is exempt from local hour wage rest break laws. And it makes sense. How can a truck that's traveling in 50 states be subject to local laws? But in California, the other dysfunctional state, we have one dysfunctional state on the left coast.
Wait, we're not the
No, we are. Whenever I'm in a room with California, we kind of get battered and bruised because we're the west coast and the right coast dysfunctional states. California has challenged that they can impose their own meal, rest break, and piecemeal implications onto trucking, which has widespread implications. If this spreads like wildfire, kind of like tolls do, if that piece, the F4A provision, is not upheld, then we essentially, once again, we cripple our supply chain, because now we have the trucking industry, 4 million strong trucks traveling around by 50 different basically playgrounds of legalities. It's crazy. It would essentially cripple our supply chain and make the things that we wear, eat, drink, watch just exponentially more expensive.
So what's the fight from the Trucking Association saying states shouldn't go down this road of allowing states to be able to have this control?
Interstate commerce and that should be preserved, and the trucking industry should be protected from having to comply with local laws, because it just cripples the supply chain. So that's the F4A issue, and that's a big issue. So everyone, we're watching tolling from a national level, and I brief ATA just about every day on what's going on. But right now we're fighting another battle that is as big as tolling, and that's the F4A. So people think, what's going on? Well, we're coming to tolling, trust us. But we got some pretty big issues we're tackling on the national stage.
Well, I'm glad that I got you in, because again, it sort of came back into the dialogue here. Folks were sort of wondering when we were going to see this.
Yeah, it's back.
And of course, press is wondering when the Trucking Association is going to do something.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking with you.
Nothing's happened that we don't expect. This is right on schedule.
It's right on schedule, but of course, you're going to continue to fight it, and we'll continue to talk with you, Chris.
My
So
pleasure.
I appreciate your coming in
Kate,
today.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.